Hey, what's up, guys? I want to welcome you back to another episode of Street Theology. It is your boy, Pastor Adrian here. I am joined today by corner three himself, Cincinnati's finest, Pastor Derrick Hayes. What's happening, man?
What's up, good people? How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. I am doing well.
Good.
And today we are joined by somebody who's not a frequent podcast person, but when he comes in, I mean, he's the guy that comes off the bench and, listen, he's going to come in and do whatever the team needs. He needs rebound, you need a block shot, you need a stop. He's the guy, hey, you need 2 yards on the third and 2, he's going to get you 3 yards. You know what I'm saying? Trey Zoda. Trey, what's happening, man?
Just call me Mr. Short Shelf Life, just because it doesn't last very long. In and out. I'm doing okay. It's a little hot today. Underneath that heat advisory,
bro.
It is, man.
What listen, and we got field day. Hey, man, we're gonna be out there. Lots of water.
Lots of water going to be there for field day. For you guys. As we're filming this, we got people listening from a lot of different places. Here in Tallahassee, we are under heat advisory. So if you want to know what that's like in Tallahassee, just imagine just a steam room in hell. That's exactly what it's like. If you want to know what it is, just imagine hell, and it's just hot and it's just nasty.
It's nasty.
I mean, literally, I walked next door. We don't have that connecting door from our office over to the recording, and I walked outside. I was like, in that little 5 seconds, I was like, oh no, no, sir.
Very hot.
It's very hot outside. So, well, guys, we are here, episode 44. Freestyle Friday. This is one of these things we're going to try to do this maybe every, once a month, once a quarter, where we get on, and we've had some before. They've been really good. Where we ping around a bunch of questions to topics. This can be good. It can also be really dangerous because you never know where we're going to go with this. But episode 44, the Pete Maravich.
Okay,
Pistol? The Pete Maravich. Also Jerry West, the NBA logo.
All right.
So the white guys of the NBA. The white guys of the NBA episode. Here we go now.
There was only two?
The only place where white people are the minority. Let me stop. I've been on vacation.
We off the rails already.
Already. But no, you guys know what we do here at Street Theology. It's about, taking theology, bringing it down to a street level. Again, our heart at Engage is really to create a movement of innovative reconcilers. People connect to God, one another, their meaningful work in the earth. And we realize that it's not only just for our church here at Engage, but really there are people who listen to this, and again, from all different places. And again, we begin a lot of buzz, man. And so today is Freestyle Friday. We're going to kind of ping it around and just start talking. So, one of the first thing I want to talk about, again, I know we had talked about a couple of topics. I'm going to throw this one out there. One of the episodes we have been getting a lot of people texting about the episode of myself, Chris Johnson, and Brian Taylor. And so, Trey, you were actually in there. You were live and in color during the recording. One night in Miami. And so Trey, what was kind of your takeaways, your thoughts about that? Again, I've been getting a lot of people communicating to me about that. Listen to the episode. Really enjoyed it. What were your thoughts, Trey?
It's super good. Just a privilege to be able to be into the room and just to be able to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. Honestly, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. My white guy, it's like I'm at a meeting I'm not supposed to be at right now. But no, I just think that everything that Pastor Chris, Pastor Brian, Pastor Adrian talked about on that it was super impactful. I feel like every time that I get to be around like some of the great leaders that are in this movement, that's in leading every nation right now, that I just am constantly learning something that I can just feel the wisdom kind of oozing out of all three of you guys. So it was just it was super cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, dope, man. It's one of those things, man, where it highlights a lot of stuff you don't necessarily get to hear. A lot of stuff what leaders are actually thinking, especially people of color. You don't really get to hear what they're thinking a lot of times, and so to be able to give those some space, it was great, man. I love the fact that especially somebody like a Brian Taylor who is going to be very much put together and cordial and man, I've never seen this guy sweat. I've never seen him have a bad day. He's just so calm, cool, and collected. But even to hear from him and all of the concerns like that it's stuff that people are thinking about it, and so man, to give voice to it, it was great. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, we again, I was super thankful for those guys actually jumping on there, and you're right. Brian's very cool, calm, collective, temperament's very even. And one of the things that we always talk about, even I'm always encouraging Brian is that because what he always says, like, man, I don't want my temperament to ever be mistaken for like I'm okay with things, and so. But I always encourage him, like, no, man, like your temperament is. I can't ever preach to people about authenticity when and that's not Brian's he's not me. He's not a Chris, he's not a, he's who he is. And I think, man, that's what makes the impact, because he can come in and be and I think he can actually get to places, at times on more of a longer term, but really move forward, which sometimes guys like myself, sometimes guys like Chris can come in and we can actually, kind of shock the system, but you can't have people shock the system all the time. You know what I'm saying? Because eventually you have people shocking the system, people will die. You know what I'm saying? And so you can't do that. But again, no, it was really good. I had so much fun. With those guys, again, our group text, actually being able to bring that to where people can actually to hear that, and our Zoom calls we have together. So that was really cool. And so, but man, since I've kind of been out, again, off and on the last few weeks, but Pastor Derrick, again, at Engage, man, you preached a sermon a few weeks ago. And it really was on this concept. I wanted to dive a little bit more into it, but man, you talked on this idea of this, and we're going through the sermon series, the paradox, looking at the life of Paul. But then you talked about this idea of, the gospel and kind of like people, it's kind of a cultural moment. And I thought it was, again, when you called me and was talking, hey, I'm thinking about this, and hey, what do you think? Are we in this place? I was like, again, I was, leading the church, hey, because it was really good, because I really appreciate that. And just so you guys know, the one thing I do appreciate so much about Derrick is the fact that he hit me up and was like, hey, in leading a church before, he could have just said, I trust him. So he could have went out there and he serves as the elder. But I think the idea of this mutual submission, the fact of ultimately leading the church is me being the lead guy, that he's like, hey, are you sure? Are you good with this? You know what I'm saying? And so we talked through it. And so I thought, man, again, delivered it, did a really, really great job. And so I kind of want to talk about that, because again, you have, 40 something minutes to kind of talk about something so robust. It's like the gospel, current culture, what we're adding to it, tying it to 2,000 years ago, what was happening somewhere. And it's just like, all right, hey, I got 40 minutes. All right, we'll see y'all next week. You know what I'm saying? And so, man, I kind of want to talk about that, because I think that's a real thing today within Christian context, is where most people, and I think most people don't even think they're adding to it. They don't think they're adding to it. So kind of give a little bit of the premise, kind of the founders for those who didn't listen to it. I encourage you, man, listen, we'll make sure, Caleb, will hook it up and put it in our, show notes, the actual sermon. But man, kind of give us a premise, and then there's a few things probably want to toss around with it.
Man, that thing, to me, it felt so spicy, man. And it felt like so much weight, man. But I honestly did not it didn't start that way. That wasn't when we did our sermon planning. That was not supposed to be the point. But I'm over here reading in Galatians, and I'm like, man, I think if Paul were here, he'd be at the very least warning us, because everywhere you look, because of CRT, because of all the social justice, because of, because people are struggling with gender identity and all of these things, that you have to kind of be up on your game, so to speak, when it comes to this cultural moment, because people will cancel you. You might not even, you don't even know what's happening. And so we're moving, and it's in the world, and it's so fast. Changes are happening so fast. And one of the things that you were helping me see was, get to the undercurrent of what's actually happening there, which is a lot of it is fear. And so the premise of it all was just that, hey, man, because of our fears, because we really want to protect something. It's almost like you're trying to defend God, and that just never goes well. You know, you try to defend God, and you end up saying it's Jesus plus. And so there's just a lot of moments that I can think. I'm looking on Twitter, looking on on Instagram, just like, that sounds like what you're saying is, yes, it's cool that I got Jesus, but I had better have the right moral compass theology about a certain thing. And if I don't, then there's all of this talk of who's being faithful and who's not. And so when I'm looking at a guy like N.T. Wright, and I'm going back and studying what he was, his ideas about what Paul is dealing with, he was saying, like, man, that was the deal for Paul, is like, man, and back then for those Jewish people, who's really faithful, right? And so his idea of this, you could be faithful if you have Jesus and circumcision, and you're part of the family now, but if not, then you're not in yet. And so you can see all these ways in which we're pitting against each other. And I think, the writing of the Bible is just like, no, man, as hard as it is, as like scandalous as it is, it's Jesus plus nothing, and that automatically messes with you.
Yep.
And because you want something to bring to the table, you want to have something right. You want to have some skin in the game of your salvation, and you don't. And so I purposely tried to meddle with hard topics like gender identity and race and politics, only so that the truth of what I see, this beautiful story about how free we really are, could shine. And so it was spicy.
No, man. And I thought you really did a good job. And again, what you said, and that's the hard thing about sometimes being a communicator, because what you have to do is realize that, like you just said, it's like, man, you went after, like, okay, we're going to talk about man. Okay, we're going to talk about gender identity. Okay, we're going to talk about, like, as a black man, I'm saying, we're talking about race. And it's like, Jesus cares about justice, but it can't be justice then Jesus. And then, we talk on the idea of, we could, you jump on certain theological concepts or whatever. So sometimes I tell people, like, to get the people to figure out what's on there, you got to kick like the biggest, like, it's like kick the hornet's nest. Like, you got to kick the biggest hornet's nest. And then you can actually dive into, like, the real hard issue. And so, like, Trey, when you heard that, what was kind of some of your thoughts, and what was kind of, again, we all have it. And this is one of the questions I want to ask you guys. So we'll start with you, Trey. Okay. So again, it's like, man, when we say Jesus, I think everyone has a proclivity to go to Jesus and. Every human being does that. Yeah. So Trey, when you go to the and, what's your and?
That's a really good question. I think that for me, just being real vulnerable, I was actually talking to Faith, my wife, about this last night, and kind of thinking about, like, one of the things that we do here on Sunday is tithes. We were kind of working over because she's going to do tithes this week. And so I think, like, as I continue to wrestle this and try to get to the basement of always, like, hey, what is it that drives me? It's always, like, Jesus and my own self-sufficiency. That, like, hey, it's not that my time, my talent, my treasure has come from Jesus, and that everything that I've done has been as a result of what he's given me. It's like, no, that's great. Like, you're here. This is part of who I am, my identity. I owe my life and salvation to Jesus, but also I did this on my own accord. Yeah. Like, this is a decision I made. This is something that I did. And so it's a continual, like, wrapping and pulling out of, like, where do you kind of separate out? Yeah, but this was because of him. That my faith is built off of that more so than it is of, like, this is something that is my ability, that I'm forcing this to happen. I'm driving this forward.
Yep. Let me ask you a question. So in that, then how does that play out when you're, because then we go Jesus and then it's like, okay, the people who kind of are bent a little bit like you, right?
Right.
Man, I kind of say on my own. How does that make you? Who are the others?
Yeah.
We go Jesus and there's always others. You know what I'm saying? We go Jesus and then there's always others. So who would be the others for you?
Elaborate for me a little bit more on that.
No. The others would be like, so for example, so I'll go with mine. So Jesus and I usually would say, when I think of the and for me, it would be, gosh, there's a lot. I mean, honestly, I feel like I've had a bunch to it. I actually had a bunch to it. But let's just go. Here's one. Like, when I hear, like, me, Jesus, and, like, reconciliation, right? Jesus and, like, justice, or, like, reconciliation with people, like diversity. Jesus and diversity. Yeah. Go use that. Because, yes, part of the kingdom is diverse. We are a multi-ethnic, it's supposed to be a multi-ethnic family, all these things, right? But sometimes what I can do is that I think anybody who's not with a heart to actually do that, or building a church like that, where you're actually actively, like, I would say, I don't know, hey, how serious, like, I would never say it publicly, but in my heart, and even sometimes it would come out and even tweets or things in a very undertone way of, like, I'm better. I'm better than you, right? So the others will be the predominantly, whether it's the predominantly all white church, all Asian church, all, whatever church. It would be any person who's out there who I would say has a political bent or view of life or worldview of life that's not about building, like, diversity. So I would always consider, hey, what I'm doing is better. So, like, those are the others to me. Those who aren't trying to build diversity, many times in my heart, can be the others. So that's what I mean.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. So, I think in that particular instance, it would just definitely be, like, looking around the people that are contributing to everything that I'm doing, right? And so it's not just realizing that I'm the one that's making this happen, or that it's of my own accord. It's like, no, I'm part of a team. I'm part of a church. I'm part of community, part of spiritual family. There's all of this, like, people that are pouring into me and that kind of thing, that they're helping to push that forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
would you say this too, Trey, and then we'll jump over your past there. Would you say, like, the other side, on the opposite side of the enemy, would that be people who are on the other side who aren't, like, who you would feel like, you know, because you're a hard worker. You're some, hey, man, like, I put myself on my own bootstraps. Not like you had, but like, I'm going to work to get what I need to get. Would you consider people who you feel like, like, would it be the people who just try to ride the you know, who can really go crazy on like the grace train? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like the, you know, like the grace train, like, oh, well, you know, that live however you want to, but oh man, it's under the grace of Jesus. You're like, yeah, but yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it somebody like that? Would that be the enemy? Would that sometime in your heart be like the others of the enemy? People who kind of like more rely on that.
Right. Yeah. Or, you know, I think it's kind of to go off that same end, the people that are like, well, if I just wait around, then change will happen. More so than being like a catalyst for change themselves.
Yeah.
And so kind of waiting on that, it's like, okay, I have to always stop myself and be like, well, what am I not looking at? What are the extenuating circumstances that I might not be aware of that's causing somebody they're not in that position yet? Or maybe, you know, part of it is just one of the things we push is awareness. So like maybe it's not even an awareness that they have. That it's like, oh, okay, there's an opportunity that it allows me in that moment to work on being an innovative reconciler, to push forward empathy, to extend across and be like, hey, let me be curious.
Yeah.
And then maybe the reason they have there is really painful. So then that gives me the opportunity to be compassionate behind it.
Yeah.
Versus just saying, hey, screw that guy. He's not working. He's not putting anything of like, all right.
Yeah. Oh man.
What about you?
Man, there's so many. Man. It's just why this hit me. Like I'm definitely with you on like the Jesus plus like my ability not to sin. My you know, I'm like, and everybody else who can live like this free grace, like, no, I don't really get down with that. Yeah. I think some of really like some core stuff for me though is like Jesus and and your ability to love people, your ability to be compassionate. And I'll put those in the same category because rightly so, right? You're looking at, you're like, well, if you know Jesus, then surely you're going to be compassionate. Surely you're going to really care. But for people, it's just like, man, you're the enemy. If you're the type of person, you don't have, you know, on one hand, it's like, I don't want the people like to have on the grace stuff. But the other one's like, if you don't, but man, if you don't have the grace, then I don't like you either. There's so many, but that's like core stuff for me. There's stuff at the basement for me. I'm like, yeah, that's my message of like my own brokenness of not wanting to be alone. So when I come into the kingdom, I'm going to say, yeah, it's got to be Jesus. And you got to have this though. Cause if you don't really rock with people and have compassion for people who are of low means and stuff like that, then I don't really know. I'm questioning whether or not, if you saved or not. So coming to, you know, here, it was a big deal. All the things that you guys saying for me were a huge deal. Cause I'm like, you know, we come in here and we like, yo, what's your goals? What goals you gonna be? I'm like, goals? Fool, God is sovereign. We just gonna depend on God and have this high theology of God and like, man, y'all weak around here, man. I'm trying to just pray and ask God and show up. And you're like, no. You're like, there's some work you got to put in. I'm like, work? Well, work. I just had there's so many things, man.
No, that's really good. And I think here's what I think if you probably would go to everyone that's in here and you go to like, you know, when I say like Jesus plus like diversity for me, like that's one of them. Like I could name me like 4 other ones, right? Yeah. But Jesus plus diversity to me is because honestly, in the core of who I am, the message of my life was I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. This is something I'm good at. So now, it's something I'm good at. So I'm good at this. Mm-hmm. So now that I'm good at this now makes me, because I didn't have any sense of who I was, this makes me more superior than you. And so now I'm like, oh, this is now the measuring stick. So now mine may not be, oh, you know, we read, that's the thing. We read in Galatians, it was circumcision, right? To join the in crowd. Yeah. For me, it's not circumcision. It's you build diversity. You care about you care about people. You care about doing it together. Like, oh, you know, and I even listen. And it's not even just those who are white. It's like, oh, black people. Oh, hold on, man. You got all white, all black church. Oh, you don't care about diversity. And it's like, and it's just, and it's like, oh no. I really, because what? Because here's the thing though. There's a truth to it, because we are ministers of reconciliation. I could easily pull out Ephesians, man, he broke the dividing wall of hostility, creating one, like this multi-ethnic. I mean, all that stuff is there and it's real truth, but it's about how it positions in my heart. And I think why this is important, you know, for all of us is the fact that what I really believe in our world today is most in a Jesus space, and why this is important going forward, because as innovative reconcilers, as representatives of Jesus, if we go whatever space we go into, like how we actually, our theology our view of scripture, our view of the gospel, God's story, the whole thing, it is so critical because it'll be how you actually live and how you are a representative of Jesus in the world. And what we fail to realize is many times our own brokenness is what drives our theology. It drives our worldview. And so what that tends to do, so I can see a lot with people who have real like pain, trauma issues. And what they do, they go high reform. And they go high reform. Yeah. And here's the thing about high reform. And again, I get, there's so many beauty things that have helped me so much in reform theology. But here's the thing about when you go high reform, it becomes about behavior, like what you can do when you go high reform, you can go behavior modification fast. And then you know what? And here's the thing, when you are really broken, you get better.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, because I've been in those worlds. 5 years from now, 7 years from now, when you do it, either you're going to be, even your heart's going to be more hard and more cold toward human beings, or you're going to hit the end of the rope and says, what am I really doing? And then you're going to have a crisis of faith. Yeah. Just on the other side, people who go, maybe you have, you grew up in a really harsh home. Then they go to, and you grew up in a very fundamentalist world. Now you're going to the whole other side of grace. God exists just for you, And then we realize that's a very empty thing too. And so I think that's why we always talk so much here at Engage and about we don't get to the basement, because the basement is going to determine kind of that view. And I think that's what we're seeing in our world today. It's the Jesus plus in everything. And what most people don't realize, they think it's just the liberals. It's the Christians who voted for Trump. It's all those types. It's the woke culture. It's all these things. I'm like, oh, that has something to do with it. But at the end of the day, no, stop, look at your own soul and realize, oh no, I'm contributing kind of like to this and stuff like that. So, all right. So yeah, Freestyle Friday, we hitting all of them. So here's the thing, Delta variant, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, Lord.
Delta variant is here. This thing has mutated. It has been COVID 2.0. And here's the problem with that. Now all of a sudden, listen, we thought we was calmed down. Now all of a sudden it's turned back up because we got mask, no mask gang. You know what I'm saying? Man, that ain't, liberal. Hey, let's say liberty. And man, you're taking my freedom to you don't care about people. I mean, we've already had that. Again, I don't care. I could care less. This person even listening to this, fine. Somebody come to our church, ain't a part of our church, mad at us because we ain't making people wear masks. Yeah. You don't go to our church. Take yourself to the church where you go to with the mask. I get it. Like, I'm not saying that, but like, you know what I'm saying? That's like coming to somebody else's house. It'd be a man where they put their glasses. You know what I'm saying? Hey, or where our table and our china's at. Like, you need to change this. I'm offended. But don't come to my house then. Like, I don't, like, that stuff bothers the living daylights out of me because you know what it sounds like? Because here's why. Let me get to the basement. Because at the end of the day, it is so self-righteous because you actually are saying you care for people, but you may have some care for people. Yeah. But when it's all said and done, you want what you want. Nobody asks clarifying questions. It's just like you come in and just saying, you don't care about people without saying, hey, well, hey, my name is Adrian. It's nice to meet you. How are you? Versus coming in. You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, guys, like we are here because listen, now all of a sudden it's, listen, last 72 hours, I don't know if you guys saw this. There was an article in, matter of fact, I'm going to see if I can pull it up really quick because I want you guys to hear this. And it was all about, like the New York Times, right? And I mean, it's talking about how, I think I got it right here. Oh, come on. Let me see if it's working. Oh, man, maybe I won't have it. Sorry, guys. Sorry if you listen to this. Oh, there we go. I think I may have it. Yeah, I got it. Here we go. New York Times. The Delta variant is as contagious as the chicken pox. It may spread by vaccinated people as easily as the unvaccinated. As internal CDC. This is like the New York Times. And it's like, it now has gone where you're like, okay, honestly, this is nothing about like whatever news source you listen to. I don't care, whatever. But like now all of a sudden it's gone super hyper. So now you got the normal, what we would consider liberal parts going. Now we all back to mass lockdown gang. And then the more, the Tucker Carlson gang is all on some, the Tucker Carlson gang all on some, man, it's about freedom and my freedom. Yeah. And I'm like, and I want to say to them about the freedom gang, like, yo fam, like, I got the freedom to wear a mask.
Right.
Like, I got the freedom to wear a mask. On the other side too, I'm like, stop making this so extra. You just call it, man, it's all about the hysteria. Cause the same people who created hysteria on one side was screaming about President Trump creating hysteria.
Yeah.
Now we've taken a pandemic and now it's turned political. Yo, how are we here? How are we here?
I have absolutely no idea. And this goes back even to stuff what we were just saying before, like the level of like where you just don't seem to really care about people, even though you're trying to somehow care about people. You end up just being so offensive. I don't understand why can't it just be as simple as like, hey man, there's need for concern. There are people who are vulnerable to this. There's like, hey, we understand. There's no like, hey, we're going to get through this together. Yep. You always have to end up just like picking a side. Like, what side are we talking? There is a biological thing that's happening to us people as humans. How could there possibly be a side to
it's like, I'm team human.
I don't understand.
Hey, I mean, man. It's always trying. Like
Trey, I don't know, Trey. Hold on. First of all, hold on. Trey, you're a white guy, so I don't know. Sometimes y'all a little crazy on it. Hey, it go both sides. Trey, what side y'all? Because like, I realize right now with white people, it's like y'all, and we can't say it either there. Because black people too.
Bro,
black people so anti-vaccine right now.
Dude, that like right and just. Or just like still on like, look, I don't care if I'm where I'm at. I'm wearing a mask. I wear my mask at my house.
Hey,
they mask wearing masks everywhere. I'm like,
I see the brother double masked up in the car. How was you?
Yo, if you are a person out there that put masks, why? I don't understand. Did you just forget that it's on? That's my hope is that they just forgot that it was on.
Yeah, sorry. I deviated off that because right now I'm just like, man, it is on. People are on some crazy. It's so point now. I just laugh. I'm like, yo, what are we doing? Then we got people. Listen, man. People be buying weed from Ray Ray, and you worry about the COVID vaccine. Hey, you know what I'm saying? You got bigger problems than the COVID vaccine. But go ahead, Trey.
No, I was just thinking. I was getting out at Publix the other day, had both my vaccines. Yeah, looking around the parking lot. See a guy parks way at the end, and then puts on his space helmet to walk across the parking lot to go inside.
Trey, stop. Are you serious?
Yeah. And I was like, man, I didn't realize it was that bad. We've gone from having chicken pox parties to where now you got to call up Jeff Bezos and be like, listen, I need the hookup. I don't know what you have whenever you went to space, but I'm gonna need the same get up.
So. Dude, yo, no, man. I honestly, man, I think we've gotten here 100%. We have gotten here because of it's an exposure of the idolatry of America. Is this idea of this. What I think it's, I heard somebody say like, hey, the first sin of this country is rebellion, right? Mm-hmm. And then what happens, a lot of times, is power, right? So I think on both sides, it's like, man, it's a fight for power. And so when you're fighting for it, what you ultimately end up doing is like, man, now it's become a culture war. So everything. So like, here's a great, mass now, right? So it's like mass. You really watch it now. And the reason why we talk about it, because we talk about critically thinking, looking at culture. So you can just see the craziness of it. So mask is one. So now it's, mask, anti-mask, right? Okay, then so here's the thing. We just know. We talk very plain here. If you're anti-mask, then you're probably a Republican, right? If you're masked, you're probably going to be a Democrat, liberal. Okay, cool.
Broadly speaking, yeah.
Broadly speaking. Now here's the other one. Yeah. Now, here's another one just happened. Simone Biles. A young lady who legit, everybody, like I was saying earlier, you see all the memes out there, brothers who can't even do a handstand out here. You got some thoughts about, well, she should be mentally tough. Like, all right, whatever, Joe Freedom 85, whatever. And so, but here's the thing though, you have her, and so you look at her, and then everybody, here's what happened. Now they're making this. It falls in culture lines. Oh, it's just this generation. Mental health. She's soft. Not knowing none of the stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then the other thing is this. Oh, here we go. We attacking her because she's a young black woman. I'm like,
yeah, man.
So there you go. So you go there. Now then it's thing. So, we go mass vaccines. Then you start getting into what's best for the economy. Left, right. You go into open, shut down, left, right. Like mental health, left, right. You talk about men, oh, you must be one of those bedwetting liberals. You talk about men, oh, if you talk about, hey, I think we should have some resilience. Oh, you're just one of those white supremacist boomers. And you're like, yo, dog, like, no, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, everything falls into the lines of culture war because it all falls there, because ultimately what it does is that when, at the end of the day, what's risen to the top of America, and this has happened within God's church, is the idol of America is this. It's power. That is the idol. At the end of the day, the thing about this, it's power. Wow. It is like, I want to be in control. I want to have power. Yeah. And so that is why we saw this. We have seen people, let's like, again, I want to hear you guys' thoughts, who literally have broken down you think about their worldview. So we have people in evangelical space. And again, I don't care who you voted for, but what I will want to say is this. When people who are evangelicals were talking about President Trump and just like, oh man, like God's man and you know, prophesying, oh, this is, you know, whoever and the whatever king and the whatever, all that crazy y'all were talking. Here's the point. I don't care if you voted for him. That's not my point. That's fine if you voted for him. My issue is when you add the extra. When you add the extra of God's hand and God's whatever, all that stuff. And here's what I'm saying. Before, we wouldn't vote for Mitt Romney because he's a Mormon 4 years earlier. Now, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, what happened? Man, hey, we're losing power. Yeah. Man, Barack Obama was in there for a long time. Yeah. This liberals going to take over. So it's about power. But now it's going the other side. So all my friends on the progressive left side. Oh, man, we're about freedom, tolerance. Until somebody tries to exercise freedom and tolerance, they don't go with you. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, you're killing them. And that's what I'm saying. So what you get to see is the outright, just the atrocity and just the bad part of what power and the idolatry of is happening in America. And so, and we fall into it. And so, I want to hear you guys. Sorry for
it to me, I don't know what you guys think about this, but it almost seems like you can only love me if you are like me. That's what it feels like to me. You really only love me if you have to be like, and when you really think about that, in every relationship, that's the space that we fail to give each other. Like, no.
Great,
like I'm not going to take up my own space and you actually have to do it the way I want it done. And if not, if you're making me feel a different way, now I've got a problem with the way you're making me feel. It's in every relationship. And it reminds me, as soon as you said control, I'm like, what you told me on the phone before I preached that message, like what Tim Mackey said. It's far easier to control people than to love them. It's so hard to love people. It's so much easier to just grab a hold and control. And that control is love me, like you have to do it like me or else it's unloving.
That's it, man.
And we won't let each other just be.
Absolutely. What did you try?
You know, I think like ultimately both issues come down to two things. Both of you guys have just touched on, which is fear and then the power to have the control. So like looking at that, because I feel a certain way, I need to have the power to ensure that I can still feel this way, because whenever you feel something differently than me, rather than us having a conversation and meeting in the middle and doing that, extending my hand, hey, I'm Trey, I would love to hear about this. Like maybe if we can get to the bottom of this, we can come to an agreement that neither of us was right, and maybe there's a middle of the road path. But instead it becomes, nope, me and the people that think like me are going to move against you because you're causing us to feel anxious. So we're going to make sure that you don't have any say over how I can feel, how I can live, like what I should do.
I was going to say this is all this like pushback now, like you're saying, even in Christian spaces about, hey, we're moving into humanism and all this kind of stuff when you're talking about, resilience and you're bringing all this psychology into it. And it's like, well, no, it's actually, you're failing to preach and talk to the whole individual. Ooh. You have to speak to the whole individual. It's not that like, oh, we should like, in other words, like, no, there's sufficiency of what the scriptures has to say about every part of our lives. It's not just that the scriptures are sufficient to talk to us about every part of our life. You can learn from all these things, and the more and more people keep pushing on this idea, like you're gonna continue to be anxious because you will never, if you don't deal with the whole person, then you cannot get to what's making you feel. Like, talk to me about how you feel, but oh no, that's not holy enough or something. That's not no, God's not there. Like, what do you mean?
Because what we do is this: we allow, because what happens, our anxiety of culture does not allow us to dig into and actually, again, critically think and read scripture. Because again, if you read the Bible, people were not human. People were not robots. Paul was not a robot. You know what I'm saying? Listen, our Lord and Savior Jesus was not a robot. Again, if that's what God wanted, he would have made, again, the Son of God to be that. Mm-hmm. He had feelings. He had emotions. He had things. Again, remember, he wept and cried for his friend Lazarus. Yeah. Man, he did not want to go to the cross, but what did he do? He chose obedience, which again, for everyone listening out there, Jesus in the garden, when everyone says, well, you know what? You keep pushing this, like, when you keep pushing this idea of suffering and hardship, yes, that is fully part of the gospel. Mm-hmm. But what allowed Jesus to suffer and go through hardship is he actually freaking told God what he really felt and what was going on. Which again, and here's what he decided. And yes, and so there's partial truth to what you're saying, but I'm still going to choose that. But what you're trying to tell people is not to feel a certain type of way when they feel a certain type of way. And let me tell you this. At some point, will we stop being so dumb and actually look and say, I'm just being honest, because it drives me crazy, because here's why. And I don't say this like in dumb, like belittling, but like actually waking us up to say, man, like, how's that working? Like how, if you, because here's the point, it goes back to, I think is what you're saying. Like we don't like, it's generally, I think it's maybe you, like we don't love other people because when you love people, because listen, I heard something today and I'm talking about, I literally, and again, I'm going to talk about this a few months from now, but it's talking about judging. Like Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, judging. And I'm talking, I heard a line and I'm like, today I'm like, all right, let me just stop. And I spent like 10 minutes. It's like, God, like, I'm really sorry because I fully do this. And here's what I want to say about loving other people. When you don't deal with this, Jesus talks about the plank and the speck. When you do not deal with the speck in your own eye, why he wants you to deal with the speck, it's not because he didn't say there was something or deal with the plank in your eye. What he ultimately is saying, he's not saying that the person didn't have something in their eye. Why he wants you to deal with your stuff is because if you deal with your stuff first, then when you interact and call somebody out for their stuff, it actually will be healing that takes place. Yeah. Healing does not take place if you don't deal with your stuff. Yeah. And I realize so many times in my own heart, I'm so quick to look at other people, the others, and not deal with why does this bother me? Because when I don't do that first, then it always ends to a greater gap and a chasm between me and that person, versus when I actually deal with my stuff, I go in as a non-anxious presence. Yeah. I go in realizing I don't have to change you. I go in realizing, man, your response does not affect me when I've dealt with, man, because if somebody says something, why does that bother me? When I deal with why it bothered me, and I'm able to say, God, you know what, man, help me. Because listen, I'm not better than that person. Because here's what happens. Guys, please realize this. When you start judging other people, here's what we really get to in the depths of our soul. We really think it's us and Jesus on one side and they on the other side, and we're right and you're wrong. Yeah. And let me tell you this, Jesus ain't on your side. Jesus, you know where Jesus is at? Jesus is in the middle of reconciliation, wanting to see two parties come together. That's where Jesus is at. And so like, so my point is like, guys, like, I stress that, and I please hear me in my heart. My wife gets on me sometimes when I say, like, you know, like, can we stop being so dumb? Because when I say, can we, like, I really do mean we. I ain't just like, because listen, you know me enough to say, when I say, like, y'all, like, I will say, like, I'll be Southern, like, yo, y'all, like, I really mean you guys, not me. But when I say, can we stop being so, because I'm dumb. There's so many times I'm just dumb. Like, I'm like, that don't even work out. Like, it never works out. And I just need us to start critically thinking about what we're reading and what we're seeing. And actually, we're called to bring people together and try something different. And I get it to speak to that side from a place of understanding, like from a human point of view. It's just that they're skipping something. What that's doing is focusing on the ability of a human being to have self-control and move in a different direction opposite how you feel. But the problem is if that's where you major, then you never actually experience the full power of what God's actual power. What you're just trying to do is just tell people, which is right to hey, move in the Bible should be moving us in the opposite direction of how we feel. If it's something, if we want obedience, then let's do that. And that's right. And that's good. So I need you to hear that. Like, no, that's a good thing. You're talking about self-control. That's awesome. But you are totally missing this area over here where it's like, oh no, the awareness of what's actually happening. Cause I know I've been in places and positions where the Bible doesn't really seem to work like it should, I guess I should stop. That's too Christian. Like my relationship with God, I'm not connecting like I should because I haven't first started with, hey, I'm over here and this is what's going on with me. I need help. I can't move in the opposite direction because I'm not even telling you what's going on. And I don't really feel like you're walking with me through it because I ain't told you what's happening.
I mean, like, as we say all the time, going back to Genesis 3, you can't answer the question of God asking where you're at if you don't know where you're at.
Yep.
You know, the whole thing with like, hey, we can sit back on our couches and we can judge Simone Biles for her own mental health, but we haven't begun to look inward at ourselves and realize that, oh, well, why is our identity so wrapped up in her mental health? Versus looking at like what's going on with me authentically, you know, being able to push into that to say, hey, have I sat in my own pain well enough? Do I know what the sources of those are? And then most importantly, have I turned around and said, God, here's where I'm at.
That's great. Yeah.
And then have that realization of a lot of the stuff that I have pain about is because of my own sin, which like Pastor Adrian just said, I need to get down on my knees and repent about because I can't connect with God in a meaningful way if those two barriers are still like, they're still there. You got to repent and you got to know where you're at and be able to process that pain with God and with other people.
Yeah, because let me tell you this, and I've said it many times. Everybody says, oh, you know what, man, you judge a tree by its fruit. I say it all the time. Listen, I don't judge no tree. I'll say this. I'm trying to judge no tree and expect somebody else's fruit of their tree unless I'm willing to take care of that tree. If I don't want to take care of that tree, I'm not going to have an opinion about that tree. I'm trying to learn about that because listen, it's what one of my mentors, because Leonard Hamilton says. He always says it to me, Adrian, don't everybody need to know how you feel. And it's so true. Like I think in our world today, like listen, I'm just saying right now, well, if it's, I have a decent Instagram following, I need to know how I feel. You got 30 followers on Twitter. Don't nobody know how you feel. Like, you know, because you know what that does. You know what I've realized when I post that stuff, and I post out of a place of brokenness, it's just more poison in my own soul. It doesn't help me. It don't help people. The people who are going to agree with me going to agree with me. But honestly, it just makes me feel more self-righteous. So I found so many things, man. I'm going to post. And now, like, oh, that's why lately, like, I just don't post stuff that, you know, and things that, like, unless I really feel like it's helpful, because in the end, it's not about them. It's about me and the health of my own soul. That's why I want to encourage a lot of you guys out there. How can you, some people are like, well, how do we actually bring this? You know, because what we want to do in these moments, we want a Bible study. We want podcasts to listen to. No. What you need to do is start at home. Here's a practical example. Well, my anxiety, you know, pushing and the others and all that. I'll give you a great example. In your parenting, I had to deal with this today. I was in a rush. My 10-year-old was going through some stuff, right? She's going through it. She's emotional and some stuff. Okay. I found myself at first very patient, but then I saw my patience starting to wear because I had to get somewhere. So now what happens? It's so much easier for me to control her now. Nope, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. Like, it's so easy because why? I got to get somewhere. And then they went about loving her, and that doesn't mean at times where I'm saying, okay, no, hey, this is the deal. Yeah, I can see. I got some of the most impactful parenting I've had with my children is when I tell them very clear deadline and no real hiding emotion behind it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And the words of our boy Uncle CY, I ain't mad at you. I ain't trying to fight you. It's like when you have that mentality. And so here's why I say that. So now when you're home and you start doing that, or with your spouse or whatever, here's why that matters, is because now if you can do that there, then it's practice. So now you can begin to practice at your workplace. You can begin to practice on Facebook. Here's the question, man. How do we begin to help? Everybody wants to change the world. Nobody wants to change the world around them. So how do you bring theology to a real level to actually to have good view? It's this. It's start with yourself. It's start with your world. So here's on Facebook. All of a sudden somebody posts something. You're like, yo, maybe somebody in your spiritual family, somebody you're close to, you're like, yo, I didn't know they thought that way. Man, hold on. And you want to jump in the comments, or you want to, subtweet or do whatever. Stop yourself. Say, okay, why does this hit me like this? Why does this hit me like this? And then the first answer, you always say the first answer ain't really the real answer. Then get down to a little bit deeper. And then, make a commitment. Say, you know what? Instead of me tweeting, instead of me posting something, I'm actually going to take a moment to pray for that person. Jackson, I'm going to pray for him. And here's why I want you to pray. Don't pray about God, you would change their heart to not be a liberal or not be, or not be, a Trump supporter. No. Pray their heart like, God, whatever's causing this anger in them, let them realize, man, there's the only way they're going to ever, society is within the idea of loving, really growing to a deep relationship with you and the fullness of the gospel, stuff like that, versus you being like, hey, stop being this. But something is driving that. Yeah. So God, help them get to that. See, that's when we begin to change. See, that's the little bit of how we begin to impact the world. And see, that's all we can do. We are not responsible. We are not responsible for other people. I am not responsible for Washington, D.C. I'm responsible for the things that God has given me. You know what I mean? And I think it's super important, going there. Guys, we coming close. Here's the thing. We've, we're well over halfway through 2021. Again, we are about to hit August. And so here's a question I want to ask you guys. What has been, it can be personally, one of the biggest surprises, kind of exciting things personally, or just in culture, or just in life, and also second, what's been one of the biggest challenges, things maybe you've been disappointed with? It could be personally, or it could be, kind of in culture as well.
I think that the biggest surprise for me is probably twofold now I think about it. Two biggest surprises is the capacity to have multiple kids, and the capacity to actually, it's a weird thing unless you have multiple kids. Maybe it just sounds like so regular, but the capacity to actually really love them well, both of them. It's a weird thing, and maybe they're just like, that doesn't sound what. But once you do, it's like, wow, I didn't realize that could be a thing. And I think the other thing for me is the capacity, I guess, to be effective, I guess, that's something for me. You just have to know me personally, I guess, to know that, like, I didn't really realize that I could walk into some levels of confidence and competence, I guess. And so that has been some really big surprises for me this year, and that's in context, as we keep going and responsibilities keep getting bigger and stuff like that. So I think those are the two for me of 2021. And I guess challenge would also kind of almost be the same thing, in that we always have this thing about us where we look at success and we believe that we're supposed to be at a certain place at a certain age and stuff like that. I think that's just kind of conducive to us in the West. In the West, we were just talking about, we're taught about success in a certain way. It makes you feel like you got to be here at certain places. And so at the same time, where I can say, yeah, man, there's levels of competence and all that kind of stuff, is same as like, man, just to like, gosh, I really thought that, I hit 41 this year, and I'm just like, gosh, I just really thought that at this age, when you're younger thinking about it, I'm thinking that, I'd be in a complete, tax bracket, all kind of stuff, and so that has been also the kind of the surprise. So mine are both pretty personal, I guess.
Yeah. Trey?
Oof. I would say a lot of both. Start off, I'll brag on her. Been married a little over a year and a half now. And I think the surprise in that has just been that, like, one of the things that she and I both really wanted was that we were coming in with it, both coming from like divorced family backgrounds. Marriage is going to be a priority. Like, we're always working towards it. And so I think that kind of continuing to learn what iron sharpens iron really means, and the ways that both of us kind of living together, doing life together, getting to know each other better and better, that how that not only has drawn us closer together and our friendship has really grown, but at the same time, how that's also just kind of sped up, I think, in some ways, emotional growth for both of us too, that it just naturally, by living with each other and having to have good communication, have good conflict, that it's that's going to naturally draw stuff out. I think one of the challenges too is just to continue, as that stuff gets drawn out, it's never surprising the depths of how messed up that how much stuff you can have there. And so then I think it's just a constant challenge of being able to continue to push into that stuff, and then also just to be able to keep God in the loop of just constantly going back and telling God where you're at, just continuing to kind of work on relationship there. And then also, Pastor Derrick, I feel like I'm coming up this year is dirty 30, so a little bit younger, but I think at the same time, there's parts of it where it's like, as I look around, I'm like, man, I don't know where I kind of thought that I would be differently, but I did think that there'd be some places that it's like doing this, doing that. But then at the same time, it's like, oh, that's my own anxiety that's speeding me up and pushing me. So it's like, as I look retrospectively, it's like, man, I'm actually in an awesome spot, But I think both of those things. So anyway, that's a lot.
Oh, can I just add one more that I did not think was a shocking thing?
What's up?
I just didn't think somebody would release their album and release it in a stadium and just walk around. I thought I didn't know I would ever see that day. You
Dude,
know,
listen,
that was a shock to the system.
That was. So for anybody who doesn't know what Pastor Derrick is talking about, Kanye West, his long anticipated album, which was actually supposed to be out last Friday, and in the most Kanye fashion ever, he's moved into the basement of the Mercedes-Benz arena to finish recording. Oh, he has a bed in there with the recording studio recording it right now. It's the most Kanye thing ever. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes. So Kanye West, and that's what he's talking about, Kanye West's album. And what Kanye did, for you guys who don't know, Kanye went around and literally dropped, it was the equivalent of somebody plugging their phone into they got the aux cord, plug the new album in, and just walk around in a red leather bubble vest and a mask. Like, that's pretty much Kanye. And we thought it was the most creative thing ever. And this is Kanye. It's the most Kanye thing ever. And so, but no, I think both of you guys are really good. And I think for both of you guys say, I want to pen that for everyone. Like, a lot of you guys probably listening, all of us. The thing everyone said when we thought we should be somewhere that we're not, and what I want to encourage you guys, we talk a lot about it here, man, I think it's super important that you hear that. Don't skip past that, because a lot of times our anxiety, our decisions we make, the depression we can feel, our angst toward God, our spouse, whatever, can be because here's the reality. We don't even have a scoreboard we're playing by. We literally just feel like, hey, I was not supposed to have more points on the board. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, we don't even know what the score of the game is or what we're trying to do. And so I think it's really important, because I think if you can create a scoreboard, you're like, oh, a lot of times you actually won't be, because normally what is it? It's material possessions. It's money. Yeah. It's money or a certain type of status versus but that may not be the game that, everybody wants to do that to be able to have resources. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think, if your job in this life is to be, hey, I don't know if if you're a builder and it's like, man, and you could oh man, I may not be doing this, but I've built a lot of really cool stuff. It's like, oh, or man, just stuff like that. I think we can really miss it. And I think it's really important. I think for me, biggest surprises, I think, would be, this is a surprise and a challenge. They both go. And it's really been hitting me the last few weeks of I've been serving Jesus for almost 23 years. And it's I realize how much I'm in awe of him and love him. And at 23 years, how far away I am from being like him. Yeah. It just hits me, because I'm when I really get to the next level of the basement of my soul, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so jacked up, and what's really scary, I would say I'm probably better than most Christians are. And I'm not saying God, and listen, and that's not, listen, that's 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 not comparing yourself. That's kind of somebody comparing themselves to me saying I'm it's not like I'm that good at all. It's but at least I'm conscious, I'm emotionally aware enough to do that stuff like that. And I'm so how far we can be off. And so it gives me, and here's the thing, it doesn't make me think I'm better. It actually makes me have way more empathy for people through that process. I think that's been the biggest thing through that process that's been there. Biggest surprise. I think the other biggest surprise for me, and it's a challenge as well, is one of my friends always says it this way. He says, you're ready when you're ready, right? And I think when you have children, you always want your children to be at a certain place. And I'm learning a lot with my son. I'm learning a lot with my wife. And he's you want them to be a certain place, but you're ready when you're ready. And that's really hard to embrace that process. But what I've realized is that I spent so many times wanting myself, others to be somewhere, that I don't live in the moment of the process to enjoy that process. And that's really hard, because here's a part of it is a real thing, because I know when they get to that process, it's going to open up a lot of stuff for them. And so I'm really wanting that. And I know what it's going to do. But also, if I'm being honest, the process of this creates so much anxiety and pain in me. And I don't want that. So that's what you end up creating. And so those are kind of the things for me. But again, it just goes back to, I thought that this year, it's just God going into the basement of my soul. I feel like I'm in a season of my life where Pastor Derrick has kind of a real went through in prayer, or a vision. And the thing is, I feel like I'm out there, you have one for me, and I feel like I'm out there on this mountain. I feel like I'm in a wilderness, but not a wilderness. Sometimes we think a wilderness is all it's all bad, but really a wilderness is really, Jesus was tempted, but really that word tempted to be tested. He was tested. And to be tested to see what's in there. And as I'm going through this wilderness, it's just literally just being there and just spending a lot of time with God, I'm realizing man, what I'm realizing was being revealed to me is sometimes how broken the motives are of my own soul. And so it's super painful, but also incredible because you're like, yo, he still loves me enough to not give up on me. Because let me tell you this right now, I'm like, yo, 23 years, fam, we still at the, like you think, you're like, yo, man, you should have a little bit of this. You're like, oh, no, I don't. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I'm very thankful for it. So, well, guys, hey, I appreciate both of you guys, man. This was a lot of fun. Guys, we are excited on Street Theology. We got some really cool guests that's going to be coming up. I mean, again, a book that rocked me and Pastor Derrick's world. A.D. Thomason, who wrote a book that rocked me and Pastor Derrick's world. I don't know if Pastor Derrick gonna be on this podcast. He may cry the entire podcast. You know what I'm saying? With A.D. Thomason, he's gonna be coming on soon. Someone who's a part of our church. Again, Dr. Crenshaw. Again, Daryl Crenshaw. Again, he's an amazing human being. He's gonna be on there. Dr. Greg Okeson, who's gonna be a part, who's on our podcast before. Yeah, he's been on before. Again, public missiology. Again, he's a great guy. Again, Mark Sayers going to be on coming up soon. Mark Sayers, Lord, and Mark Sayers, the God's going to be on. You know, a lot of other things that we're going to be doing. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to encourage you guys, man, write a review, like, share. Again, when this pops up, when it drops up on our Instagram, and make sure you do that. You share it. Again, what we want to do is just be a blessing and help the people to be fully who God's created them to be. Until next time, we'll be back with you soon on Street Theology.